Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Club. This is the place everyday real estate investors gather to share their best stories, biggest insights, and favorite tactics to grow a portfolio of cash flowing properties in today's market. Here's your host, Gabe Peterson.
All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. It is July 19th. I swear to God, it is like 1,000 degrees out here in Seattle, and it is never hot. So I hope you guys are keeping cool out there. We have a good episode in front of us with Brit, Foshee down there in Florida. Brit, I'm sure you guys are getting tons of heat down there if it's hot here in Seattle.
We get the heat and the humidity in South Florida. So it's not
Double
just hot,
whammy.
you feel like you're in a sauna. So
there you go. Brit, thank you very much for hopping on the show. I know that you are an expert at flipping. That's your bread and butter. We like to hear flippers. You guys run the show down there in the single family game. So super excited to jump into this. I told you before we got on here, we like stories. So why don't you take us to the beginning of your story? How'd you get started in real estate?
Yeah. So I grew up in sort of a low class household and just decided really early on that I did not want to live like that the rest of my life. And so I was kind of an entrepreneur early on in my life. And I just had always sort of gravitated towards real estate. And so I had saved up about $8,000 and was able to purchase my first property. And it was actually right at the time, sort of the housing market was falling apart. And so I wasn't smart enough to know any better.
This is in like 2008?
Yeah. So 2009 was actually when I bought my first property, and I didn't know any better. So I just was buying, and they were actually offering a tax buyer credit for first time buyers. So if you're willing to buy a property, the government will just mail you a check. And my check was for like $8,500. And so I had only saved up about $8,000. That's what it cost me to get into it. And I had to kind of wait a couple of weeks till I got that check back. And that was the money that I actually used to like rehab the property.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I lived in that property for 2 years, and then I sold it for, I think I made like $40,000 in the first property, and I lived in it. So I sold it 2 years later, which means I got to keep all of that money tax free. And that was all that I needed. That was like my first taste of blood. And I just was like, that was it. So took that money, rolled it into another property, ended up buying a rental. And that kind of is how like my story started. And yeah.
Nice. Yeah. If you get a good taste in your mouth from that first deal, it's so crucial to your motivation, to get that first deal under the belt with a positive ROI. Sounds like you got that. Was that down there in Florida, in Fort Myers?
Yeah, it was. Yep.
You got an $8,000 house in Florida. That's crazy.
So that's what it cost for me to get into it. So that was my down payment.
Okay.
I still was able to get a loan, but at the time, I mean, that home traded, I think, for like $90,000, something like that. I mean, I got a 3-bed, 2-bath pool home in Fort Myers for $90,000. I mean, that tells you how distressed the market was at the time. So
yeah. In Fort Myers, isn't the median household? It's got to be nearing 400 at this point, right?
Yeah, I would say it's about 450. Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, great. I mean, you got into that first one, you got it done. You had that check in your hand, 40,000. I know that. When you get that first deal done, a 40,000 check feels like $1 million. It just feels like you can take that and retire on it. But after you finished that first deal, what was the next step for you?
Yeah. So I kind of split the money into two, right? And I took like half the money, and then I went and bought a rental property. And then I took the other half of the money, and then I bought my next flip. And that's kind of how I've managed my portfolio in a way, even up until today, which is like, the more cash I get, the more rentals I buy, but the more cash I need to kind of build my flipping operation. And so, that led me to, my next 3 or 4 rentals, my next 3 or 4 flips. And, after about my 3rd or 4th flip, I remember having lunch with this guy named Greg, and I sat down with Greg. It was on a Sunday, and we were having lunch, and he just said, "Hey, like, what do you do?" And I said this. And at the end of the lunch, he's kind of an older guy. He looked at me and he just goes, kind of like under his breath, he goes, if you ever need any capital, let me know. And that was like the first time anyone had like, mentioned money or investing or anything to me. And like, I was still young at the time. I was just like, all right, this guy wants to give me money. Let's go. So the next day I wrote this guy an email. I already had a property lined up. So this is the property. Here's the numbers. And this guy was like he was like, all right, let's do it. And so closed on that property with my first investor. And that's kind of the story of how I started taking on outside capital and really sort of escalated like the growing process for me was bringing on those investors.
Yeah, once you hit that, that barrier from using your own capital to using somebody else's capital, I feel like that's a big step in any investor's journey. So how did you? I missed that part of the story. How did you meet up with this guy?
Yeah, so we actually went to the same church, and so
Okay.
after church one day, we just were having lunch together, and he just was like, "Yeah, what do you do?" And like I started explaining to him, and kind of ran through some of the numbers and some of the projects that we had done. I even like showed him pictures. I was not pitching this guy; it wasn't crossing my mind that he would be an investor, and so. But like I said, afterwards, after that conversation, he just was kind of like, "Well, man, if you ever need money, let me know." And so that was it. Pitched him the next deal, sent him some photos, some numbers, made sense to him, and I was off to the races, sort of there with my first investor.
Yeah, that I feel like that's really. I like the story because it really shows the importance of relationships. Not when even hard relationships where you're going out there trying to find investors, but just your standard. I meet a guy at church, or I meet a guy, at the gym, and I'm having a conversation talking about what we do. Every relationship is super important, both to you in your person and also to your career, because you never know when somebody's just going to stand up and say, "Hey, I like what you're doing. I'd love to be part of it. How can I, invest in your next deal?"
Yeah, I love this idea that I want to make sure that people know what I'm doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, Gabe, I've never pitched anyone on
Yeah.
raising capital. I've been able to just attract capital. And so I think if you just plant enough seeds and nurture enough relationships, that over time, people will come to you and be like, "Hey, man, do you need money?" And that's been my story. And I've been fortunate enough to raise capital through that lens.
Nice. I like how you put that, attract capital versus I can't remember the other way you said it, but basically pitch to find capital.
Yep.
I think that's super important. And it really does come down to just talking about it, just, letting people know what you're doing, putting on social media. "Hey, I just closed this deal. Super excited about it." And you don't even have to say, reach out if you want to invest, just close the deal. Super excited about it.
That's right. That's right.
Awesome. So once you close that first deal with outside capital, I'm sure is a big step for you. But you've done it looks like $35 million in flips since then. So that wasn't your last deal. How did you scale from that point?
Yeah. So at the time, I was sort of doing everything myself, right? I was sourcing the deal, sourcing the capital. I was running the rehabs. I was the agent on the sales side. I mean, I was a one-man band. And so
you were an agent as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was selling the property, and that was saving me money, right? I was taking the commission as well. And so what I learned quickly was that I was only going to be able to do probably like 5 or 6 deals a year with that many hats on. And so I just started to scale my team at that point. And so I brought on my brother actually to run all of the construction side of my company. That was like my first hire. My next hire was like an acquisitions manager, someone who just went out and sort of, sourced deals for me. And so the next step for me was to really grow my team, grow the sort of the reach that I had. And that was the way I did it, was just started hiring people.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, it's so when we start our businesses, it's so easy to try to do everything ourselves, but that is the easiest way to burn out, at least in my experience. So you started hiring, it sounds like your brother took on construction management, and then you got somebody for acquisitions. What were the next couple of positions that you hired for?
So we did what I would call like a transaction coordinator. So this person sort of took it from the acquisitions and they got it to closing, and they would do the same on the sales side. Whenever we went to sell the property, they would making sure it just got to the closing line. And then we hired on some additional like foremen for the construction crews as that side of the business grew. And so that's it. Right now, my team's about 5 people. And I just recently hired a social media guy. So he's doing all of my social media now. And that's where we're at today. We've done about 200 transactions and flips and just over $35 million, ranging anywhere from like the $200,000 flip all the way up to the $3, $4, $5 million flip. We've done them all. So
yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite things about real estate is you can do it lean and mean. You can be a one-man band, you can have a 5-man team, or you can have a 300-person company. And either way, it still works. So Sounds like you guys are going lean and mean. You got the 5-man crew there. Um, for for your actual strategy, you guys do fix and flips. Is there anything else inside of there that you focus on, or is it exclusively flipping?
Yeah, I mean, we do a little bit of everything, and what I tell people is we're kind of just opportunists, and so we find opportunity, we seize on it, so we put it under contract, and then we decide what to do with it from there. So sometimes we will add it to our rental portfolio, sometimes we'll add it to our Airbnb portfolio, sometimes we'll just wholesale it, so we'll just sell it off to another investor. Sometimes we'll close on it as is and sell it as is. We'll never actually even do any rehab. So our job is to like bring in the opportunities and then decide what direction is this property best suited, and sort of what is the most highest return of capital on this project. And each project's different. Some, we get into situations where it's going to cost us $50,000 to rehab it, but we're only going to get about a $50,000 return when we actually do rehab it. So we're getting a 1-for-1 trade. That's a bad trade, but we still know there's opportunity there, so we could buy it and still make 20 or 30 grand on a resale. And so those are the types of things we're evaluating as we bring in properties, but we're opportunists, and we decide from there where the property should go.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the best way, especially in single family, commercial as well, but it's the best way to go about any deal is to have all of these tools in your tool belt that you can apply to the deal, because if it doesn't work as a flip, it might work as a long-term hold, or it might work as a wholesale. You just never know. You got to take the opportunity as it stands and decide which strategy is best for it.
That's right. Yeah.
I heard you mention Airbnbs in there. I've been recently, our focus is self-storage, mobile home parks, but I've been wanting to buy an Airbnb for our family to use, during for our own vacations, but then we can use it as an Airbnb during the rest of the year. And I found it's really difficult to underwrite these, at least for myself. How do you decide what should be an Airbnb versus what should be a long-term hold?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it is difficult. Even as someone who does it, I still find it to be very difficult. One of the things that we're looking for in an Airbnb is we're looking for some sort of attraction. So is it near an airport? Is it near a college? Is it near somewhere where people are going to have to travel frequently? And does the property have vibes of a place that people would want to, vacation at? So typically our Airbnbs in Florida always have pools. And we're not going to do an Airbnb without a pool. It's like actually the number one thing people ask us when they inquire is, does the property have a pool? And then from there, we're just looking for locations. And if there's anything special or unique about the property that we think a guest might enjoy as a short-term stay, that's always a plus for us. And that's really just aesthetic, or it might be a funky backyard, or maybe there's a bar in the backyard, something that just would be like kind of cool. We find that Airbnb guests really like experiential stays, things that are just unique and different. If a property has that means it might be a great Airbnb, but can be very tricky to underwrite. And, there's softwares out there. AirDNA is a software you can use, but I honestly don't even trust that as much. So I'm typically doing my own underwriting by just kind of diving into local Airbnbs, what they're going for, and underwrite them from there.
Yeah, we just had one under contract in Port Angeles that when I was doing the underwriting, the rental rates were so varied throughout the market, and I just couldn't, my estimations, my pro forma was between $40,000 a year and $120,000 a year. And so I was like, I honestly can't, I have no idea. And so I can't close on it because, I don't have, there wasn't enough confidence behind it. And so how do you decide? Well, I guess that really depends on the market, but how do you decide what the rental rate will be? Is it just looking at comps, or?
Yeah, it is very complex, and it can be hard to like quantify things, but the 40 to 120,000 range that you're describing that's exactly how it is anywhere you go. And so you just decide, like, am I closer to that $40,000 property? Am I closer to that? Does mine have a pool? Has it been recently updated? Is it nicely decorated? Because the one that's on the lower end, my guess is that's just like a low end, a host that doesn't care. It's like a quick in and out stays, and so probably has bad reviews. And so like if that's the kind of host you're going to be, then yeah, like that's how you need to underwrite the property. But if you're going to be like a higher end host, nice property, clean, keep it updated, that's where I would move towards that direction. And again, hard to like quantify that. I don't know if there's a formula you can use, but I think, any of your guests listening could do enough due diligence and sort of deduction on their own to figure out where their property might land in that range. But the ranges are very wide.
Yep. Two other strategies that I heard you mention was wholesaling, and then also I think they call it wholetailing, where you buy the property and then just list it automatically.
That's right.
How do you decide which of those two strategies to use? Because they are very, very similar.
Yeah, so we prefer wholetailing because wholetailing almost always gets us a larger return, right?
And that's buying it and then relisting it, right?
Exactly. We just buy it as is and then just turn around and sell it, right? And then we, maybe we do a quick clean out of it or something, or at that point we usually label it as a rehab. But I'm talking about literally just taking it as it is and selling it. We prefer to wholetail it because that gets us more exposure to the most amount of buyers, right? By getting it on the MLS. More exposure, more buyers, higher price. So if we wholesale it, we're going to actually take a lower return. So how we decide that is pretty simple. We just have to determine, can the property be financed or not through traditional means. If it can be financed traditionally, we're going to wholesale it. If it cannot be financed traditionally, we're going to wholesale it off to an investor who we know can either close with cash, hard money, quickly, that kind of thing.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Cool, man. Well, hey, I just took a peek at the clock. It looks like we've run it down. So it's time to jump into the quick question round. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. Starts with books or any form of education. Give me 2 recommendations, one for general life wisdom, one for real estate.
Before we continue on with today's guest, I want to tell you guys about a community I'm launching on School to help investors like yourself grow your own portfolio. In this community, you'll get access to all the docs I use, all the systems I've built, everything I've used to grow my own portfolio, as well as instructions and guidance on how to get out there and find great deals, how to finance those deals, and then how to manage them for great returns. Since we're just launching it, the price will be set at a measly $20 per month, and whatever price you join at is the price you'll have for life. We will be increasing the price as the group grows, so if you're at all interested in growing your portfolio along other investors, now is the time to join. I will put the link somewhere in the bio or on our podcast website at therealestateinvestingclub.com, so if you are interested, head on over there. With that said, let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah. General life. I like a book called Money. I forget the author's name, but he basically just describes the history of money. And he goes through literally how it started back, in the early centuries and all the way up to where we are today. It gives you a really good foundational understanding of how money works and how it's much different today than it was some 2,000-3,000 years ago. Loved it. It was very helpful for me.
Is that by Jacob Goldstein?
It is. Mm-hmm.
There you go. Just pulled it up on Amazon. It's got good reviews.
Yeah. It's a great book.
Nice. How about, was that general life wisdom or was that real estate?
I put it under general life, but yeah.
That's fair. Give me one for real estate.
Yeah, real estate. I'm going to go super cliche here. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Sorry. I'm sure you've heard that 1,000 times. But for me,
it's all good.
It was the one book that once I read it, totally transformed the way I viewed money, life, and particularly real estate. And so that was the game-changing book for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's same for me. And for a lot of people that have come on this show, a lot of people say that, but there's no shame in it because it is a good book, especially for those just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question is for your younger self. So let's go back to the Brit who had no experience in real estate. He was just getting started. Go to him, look him in the eye, give him one piece of advice moving forward.
Yeah, I just talked about this on my Instagram. The one piece of advice that I would give myself is to go slower but bigger. When I was young, I went fast and small. I did a lot of deals and I did them really fast. And my advice would be, hey man, go slower, but actually go bigger. That would be my piece of advice.
Yeah, I feel like that's really good advice. To me, when I hear that, I think systems, because that's what slow and big kind of works out to be, is just building the systems, building the foundation that you can pile, more volume into versus just getting those quick deals done.
Sure. I agree.
All right. This next one, I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask it anyways. This is about the U.S. It's a big place, a lot of opportunity out there. Give me the single metro that you're most excited about investing in today.
I like my own metro. I have reasons why too. I think Florida particularly is a bit of a hub right now for growth. I would put Florida up against any state in terms of investing right now. And then particularly South Florida, even specifically my unique market is we got hit really hard by Hurricane Ian just about 9 months ago. And so many opportunities have come because of that and are still surfacing because of the hurricane that I would put my market up against any market in terms of the opportunities that are available. And I love the market I'm in right now.
That's I've been past a few deals in Florida, and I keep passing on them because of the hurricanes. How do you? This is not in the quick question round, but I'm curious. Yeah. How do you take the fact that there are hurricanes into consideration when you're investing down there in Florida?
Insurance. Insurance. I'm not going to lie, like Hurricane Ian sucked for my business. It threw a lot of wrenches into the system, right? But the reality is I had insurance. So insurance paid me off for all the expenses that I incurred, for the lost rents that I incurred. And so, now my insurance is more expensive today. So, it's a give and take, but you underwrite it with good insurance. And that's what I'd say.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, this next one, I'm curious what you're going to say here. Every transaction that we get into, it starts with finding the deal, finding the lead. So what is your favorite way to find good deals?
Man, I'm a networker. So, I don't have a secret sauce, some secret that you guys don't know. My secret is I pick up the phone and I call people, and I don't pitch or ask for deals. I literally just stay relational with everyone. Hey, how's it going? What are you into? What's happening in your life? And I do this over and over and over again. I do it on social media as well. Like I legit, not somebody for me, I legit will reach out to people and DM them and say, how's it going? I love that deal. And I just stay top of mind for people. And then I hope that when they have a deal, they'll bring it to me. And that seems to be what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, network, especially with social media now, if you personally do it and you're reaching out to people, it really is effective. All right. Next question is about mentors. None of us are islands. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. So who is one mentor who has contributed significantly to your career today?
Yeah, there's a guy named Mike Deeskin. He's actually the broker who I hang my license under. And as I was just getting started, he was a guy who had 30 or 40 doors himself. And I was kind of a figure it out myself guy, but I learned really quickly that there was just some things I couldn't figure out myself. And so he was the guy that, man, he would not mind just sitting talking with me as I asked him questions. I remember visiting some of his rentals and rehabs early on and just going, wow, like he's doing things I never would have thought of. And so, yeah, in fact, as I talk about it, I probably need to shoot him a text or call and tell him thank you. And he had a big impact on my journey for sure.
Yeah. Having somebody who's, a couple rungs up the ladder than we are, being able to see what they do and how they do it is so crucial to our career's development. So shout out to Mike. Thank you for helping Brit get to where he is today. Yeah. All right. Second to last question. This is about your lessons learned. Every deal, not all deals go well. Some of them go bad, but in those deals that go bad are the biggest lessons for our career. So give me one deal and the biggest lesson you learned from it.
Yeah, so this is actually a really recent deal. I bought this deal back in mid 2022. This deal went through the hurricane, and I ended up taking my only and biggest loss of my career in this deal. I just closed on it like 6 weeks ago. I lost somewhere like $75,000 on this deal. And so there was a lot of lessons learned. But I think the biggest lesson for me was that I will never again adjust my buying criteria. And I think that we were getting into a market where I was having a hard time finding deals. And so I shifted my buying criteria. I mean, just a smidge, and it came back to haunt me significantly. In fact, I ended up selling a few deals for very little profit and break even because of that. And I had just adjusted that right as the market started to shift. So it was certainly poor timing on my part, but I can tell you again, it will never happen again. My criteria is what it is. And until something glaringly jumps out and tells me I need to change it, it's not going to change. And so it got me to where I was, decided to adjust it. Really bad mistake. So
yeah, I feel like it's a hard lesson to learn, but it's a very valuable one, because if you're going through a deal drought, you haven't closed on something in a while, it's so easy to want to shift your criteria and just be like, okay, maybe if it's in a bad metro that's shrinking, that's not so bad. Maybe I can make it work. But once those little voices start talking in your head, make sure and shut them up, because man, you got to make your money on the close, or else things like this can happen.
Right.
All right, that leads us to the very last question. This is for the listeners. I'm sure people want to reach out, get in contact with you. What is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so I'm all over social media right now. We're big pump on it. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. We're doing a lot of YouTube shorts, LinkedIn, just about any platform that you name, we're out there, and we're pretty active right now. We would love to interact with your audience.
Cool. And that is BritFoshee, Brit Foshee. If you guys want to find him on any of those, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, it's all Brit Foshee. I will put those links in the show notes. So if you guys want to reach out, just click the little more in the description. It'll pull down the full description, and in there you can find those links.
Awesome.
All right, Brit, that wraps it up. Thank you very much for hopping on the show.
Gabe, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. For everybody who's here with us, thank you guys for showing up. You are the reason we do this. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever, reach out to me, Gabe, at therealestateinvestingclub.com. And if you guys want to support the show, all we ask is you give us a like, subscribe, share, all that jazz. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
All right, before I officially sign off, I have a quick announcement to make. If you're interested in becoming a passive investor in one of my deals, my own company, Kaizen Properties, is looking for capital partners for our upcoming projects. We invest in what are known as recession-resistant assets, mainly self-storage facilities, mobile home and RV parks, and industrial properties. If you're interested in investing and would like to learn a little bit more about my company, our investing criteria, and some of the previous projects we've done, go to the Real Estate Investing Club podcast at therealestateinvestingclub.com and scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. Click on the Invest With Us button. That'll pop up the investor form. Fill that out, and we will reach back out to you as soon as we can. Or if you prefer a little bit more of a personal touch, you can reach out to me at gabe@therealestateinvestingclub.com. So really, that is it. Again, it was a pleasure hanging out with you guys during this episode, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.